What's up guys, it's me, Kidar, and in this video we will be taking a look at the rise of fantasy tabletop gaming in the 20th century. The earliest trading card games were heavily inspired by fantasy war games and fantasy role-playing games, and in this video I'll take a look at the history of these fantasy war games and tabletop games. This video is the second part in a series in which I talk about trading card game history, so stay tuned for more content. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video.
Games based on warfare have interested men for centuries. This is the opening text of Chainmail, the game that put into motion the rise of one of the most influential games of all time. Chainmail, which was designed by a man named Gary Gygax, who is a member of a wargaming group called the Castle and Crusade Society, is a very different game than the modern trading card game. Chainmail is a medieval war game, similar to chess but with less abstraction. Chainmail, which was published in 1971, is a simulation of war, with figurines representing individual soldiers or armies, as all war games are. However, Chainmail decided to have some fun and included a fantasy supplement. This add-on contained rules for spells and magic that could be used to spice up the game. While publishers didn't enjoy the fantastical element of Chainmail, another member of the Castle and Crusade Society, named Dave Arneson, did. Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit were all the rage for the fantasy genre in the 20th century, and inspired a game called Blackmoor, designed by a man named Dave Arneson. Blackmoor was a wildly different game. It takes place in a castle, aptly named Castle Blackmoor, and each player had a specific character that they chose and played as. Afterward, these characters explored the underground dungeons and had adventures there. This roleplay of a character and the free-form dungeon exploration was unseen in any game before it, and it laid the groundwork for the modern role-playing game, and eventually the modern trading card game. Dave Arneson then introduced Blackmoor to Gary Gygax, and the two began to work on a fantasy game that combined the openness of Blackmoor with the combat and action of Chainmail, and created the fantasy game in 1974. The final name, Dungeons & Dragons, was chosen by the 2-year-old daughter of Gary Gygax. Many game publishers found Dungeons & Dragons to be too radical and rejected the game for publishing. Arneson and Gygax decided to take matters into their own hands and publish Dungeons & Dragons under their own company, Tactical Studies Rules. Dungeons & Dragons made its way from humble Lake Geneva to game shops all over the country. Soon, 20-sided dice were rolled in houses all over the country, and tales of sword and sorcery were woven. Dungeons & Dragons was a hit, and was a major influence on the first trading card games. Dungeons & Dragons was a game like no other. It brought the fantastical tales of Lord of the Rings, John Carter of Mars, and Conan the Barbarian to tabletops of many. The best part was, the players were active participants in the story. This free-form style of gameplay allowed players to not just listen to a story, but be the main characters. Dungeons & Dragons was a revolution, and it inspired many tabletop gamers to create their own board and card games, eventually inspiring a mathematician to create one of the most successful tabletop games of all time. Magic: The Gathering.
The rise of Dungeons & Dragons was a major influence on the early trading card games, and in my next video, I'll talk about the history of the very first trading card game, Magic: The Gathering. So please leave a like and subscribe for more content, as well as comment any other facets of trading card game history you would like to know down below. If you'd like to get your hands on the next step in trading card history, the new and unique Gladiator trading card game, a link to the shop page will be in the description down below. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.